Okay. Everyone's in. All right. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Ron.
Good evening, Councilman. Just going to give another minute or so just let people who still haven't come in yet, give them a chance to get in, and we'll get started in about a minute or so.
Okay, it's
Okay.
muted.
Okay. Couple people still logging in. We'll give it another couple seconds. All right. It is 6 o'clock on the dot. Good evening, everybody. My name is Ron Snyder. I'm with our Baltimore County Department of Public Works and Transportation's Communications Department. We are here tonight to provide the community with an update to the Perry Hall Manor collection system. Again, our goal today is to provide updates, to give you a status report, and to be able to answer anyone's questions that we may have tonight. Beth, could you go to the next slide? So again, we just ask, first off, we're just going to let everyone know that the meeting is being recorded. We will make sure that this meeting is posted on the county's YouTube page, as well as on our project page within the DPWT website. So anyone that wants to go back and watch this afterwards, so they can, and also can share it with those who may not be able to be here tonight. We just ask that everyone please remain muted during the presentation, and to please place questions in the chat box or raise your hand. We will do our best. Our plan is to answer everyone's questions tonight, and also make sure that we're going to end the meeting approximately at 7. But again, if we still have questions, we will keep the meeting open to ensure that everyone's questions have been heard and answered. So with that said, I'd like to introduce our director, Director Lauren Buckler, who will kind of provide us with the agenda, and then we can get into the presentation.
Thanks, Ron. Good evening. I'm Lauren Buckler. I'm the Director for Public Works and Transportation. I am happy to have a lot of my team on here tonight to talk about how we are moving this project forward. We understand it's an important project for the community. We are doing everything we can to keep the train moving. So we're gonna go through some background on this project just to make sure we're all on the same page of what the project is, why we're doing the project, and give you some design updates on where we are, what that impact is to the cost, the timeline, the benefits, and then take questions. There is a chat box if you are on with us through a computer. You are welcome to send chatted questions at any time. We think we will get a lot of the questions answered during the presentation that we had emailed in advance. If we haven't answered your question, we will take questions at the end and get through as many as we can. I will turn it over to Councilman Marks to say a few words, and then we will turn it over to the technical team.
Thank you very much, Lauren. I'm going to be super brief because I know there are a lot of questions there. I want to thank your community leaders with whom I've been interacting since 2018. many of the residents, and I want to thank the department as well as the county executive. As a state senator, the county executive secured the funding that significantly drove down the cost of this project. So thank you to everyone, and I look forward to an engaging and productive meeting.
Thank you, Councilman. I will turn it over to our technical team from DPWT that will go through this project.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm Amy Bly. I'm the Sewer Design Section Chief for DPWT. Beth, if you would move to the next slide, please. Just a quick recap of what the project is. I believe most of you know that there are a number of failing septic systems in the community. So you can see from the map that the project identified the area that's impacted and will be served via public sewer. The sewer mains will remain within the roadways, and the roadways will be repaved following the project completion. So as I said, this is a health project. It was meant to identify and resolve issues with failing septic systems. Based on a 2020 study, the best course of action was determined to provide public sewer to the community. I understand that not all septic systems are failing. However, the area that is failing the area of the project is intended to benefit others as well as those that have existing failing septic systems. Can you go to the next slide, please, Beth? So an update on the sewage pumping station that I'm sure you all saw via the mailer. The county has not been able to secure a location for the sewage pump station, which was critical to the original design. This has led us to look at multiple other options to see what the best option was, the best engineering option was to be able to provide the community with public sewer. The pump station was initially proposed to be able to take advantage of a gravity system as much as possible. That is Baltimore County's preference, is always to use gravity. It does require less maintenance, and we try to make that work whenever possible. Unfortunately, that does not seem to be the case here, so we are transitioning to a new low pressure system design. This means that every participating home will have a grinder pump located on site. It eliminates the need for the pump station, and this also allows us to move forward quickly without acquiring additional property. All of the grinder pumps will be installed and owned and maintained by Baltimore County. You can see a brief in the image provided. This is just a very simple mock-up. So your sinks and toilets and all of your plumbing will, instead of being connected to your septic system, will now be connected to a grinder pump. We intend to have the grinder pump serve your property via gravity. There should be no need for ejector pumps. And from the grinder pump, it will push the sewage into the grinder mains, or I'm sorry, the low pressure mains, which again will be located in the roadway. The pressure mains are typically smaller sizes than your gravity system. They range roughly between 1/2 inch to about 3 inches. It'll also allows us to bring the depth of the sewer much shallower. So we'll keep it just below the frost line. This should lessen a lot of disruptions to the community. And I will also add that the system is being designed currently to accommodate all existing properties as well as current vacant lots, with the caveat that the system will still function with the current number of connections applied. So what I mean by that is if factoring in the current vacant lots requires an upsize of a pipe or a change to the design that then will not function well with the current connections, we will not sacrifice your current functionality to accommodate future future builds on those vacant lots. So what is a grinder pump?
Let's answer your question.
A grinder pump are submersible pumps that are included in a watertight tank. So again, all of your sewage and wastewater from your house will drain by gravity into the grinder pump. It will grind up the solids and pump it into the main sewer pressure until we are able to reach the gravity system. So I have some examples up here. The picture on the left is an example of an existing septic system, what maybe some of yours look like or similar. The image in the middle is an example of a grinder pump access panel or access hatch. These are not easily accessible. I know there was some safety concerns. We do work around, actually, let me come back to that. The picture on the far right is an example of the grinder pump electrical panels and alarming system. So the grinder pumps do maintain pressure. They do not allow for backflow of sewage into your homes. That will not happen. There should be no odor associated with the pumps. As I said before, the county will own and maintain the grinder pumps. We currently own and maintain approximately 3,000 grinder pumps countywide. We have been maintaining those over the last 20 years. So these are proven systems that work in areas where gravity is not possible. We do typically use E1 grinder pumps, but the contractor is able to propose whatever grinder pump meets our specifications. I know that was one of the questions that we received ahead in advance. So it is up to the contractor to propose what grinder pumps they are planning to install as long as they meet our specifications. Following the project, we will provide user information to all of you. You will receive a mailer that includes things like what not to flush, such as flushable wipes. Those are a lie. They are not flushable. Please don't flush them. What to do during power outages and other, basically an owner's guide for all of you. Next slide, please, Beth. Thank you. As far as community impacts, so the county contractor will be installing the main that again is within the roadway, and the county contractor will also be installing the grinder pumps and all the electrical requirements needed for the pump. This means if electrical upgrades are required for your particular residence, that will be included in the project as part of the connection cost, and the contractor will take care of that for you. The property owner is responsible for connecting the house to the grinder pump. And interruptions to your service should only occur while the plumber is connecting your house to the grinder. So you can
I just
see.
want to, Amy, I
Oops,
just
sorry,
want to
Lauren.
repeat some of the things you just said because there's
Mhm.
questions coming in about them at the same time.
Sure.
So as Amy just said, the county contractor installs the grinder pump, not the homeowner's plumber. The county contractor installs the grinder pump. The electrical upgrade is installed by the county contractor if you need one, not your contractor, county contractor.
So again, from the image, you can see this is a profile of the plumbing leaving your house, entering the grinder pump. There is a shutoff valve that will be located so that if your grinder pump needs serviced, we can isolate it. And then there is a connection to the main. We do work with the property owners within reason for the location of your grinder pump. We need to make sure that the location works from an engineering standpoint. So we need to make sure that it is deep enough so that you can service your house via gravity without the use of an ejector pump. And we do try to put them as close to the roadway as possible so that when we are servicing them, we don't disrupt you. But if you have, you know, a nice landscaping in your front yard and you would like us to shift it over an extra 5 feet so that we are not on top of your landscaping, we can accommodate that. If we cannot accommodate that, we will replace the landscaping. Anything that is damaged, everything will be replaced in kind at the time of at the completion of construction. Another question, there were several questions related to environmental or leak risks that we received. There are no increased environmental or leak risks for grinder pumps versus a gravity system. Next slide, please. As far as project timeline, we're looking at our permitting being wrapped up around the end of this year, this calendar year, with our design completed in spring of 2026. We should be able to advertise the project for construction in the summer of 2026, with award expected in fall of 2026 and a construction completion in spring of 2028. Next slide, please, Beth. And I'm going to turn it over now to Ellen, who's going to talk about our costs and funds.
Thanks, Amy. Excuse me. So the overall costs for the project for the estimated, it will increase, excuse me, from the estimated notice of assessment provided in 2022. We don't have those estimates yet since the design isn't yet complete, but once we do, we will send the owners a letter outlining your costs. The state funds for this project of $4.5 million are available for us and they are secure. These funds will be going towards the property owner's share of the costs. Since the connection costs are higher than anticipated and the design is being reworked, we are allowing new connections. The deadline for anyone who's not yet opted into the project is November 1st. To review the benefits of connecting, I know we went over this a couple years ago, but a refresher here, especially for the grinder pumps. The county, as Amy said, the benefit is if you connect with the project, the county needs the grinder pump. The benefit is you have the benefit of the state funds, which will reduce the cost to connect. Additionally, the plumbing charges, which cover the cost of your plumber to connect the grinder to your home, that cost can be financed through the county if you connect with the project. There are also no future restrictions for home improvements or sales because of septic capacity. In summary, your costs to connect will be much less if you connect with the project instead of later. Thanks, Amy.
All right, I want to review some next steps and call out some things that you all need to look out
Excuse
for.
me. I have a question. This is Bob Swiderski. Can we take some time and go back to the questions that were asked and maybe answer them before we get the next steps?
Can we please get through the presentation first and then finish up with questions?
We're
As long as
almost done. We got this one more slide, Bob, and then the rest of the time will be for questions.
All right, I just want to make sure the questions don't get missed. Thank
Understood.
you.
So our most, sorry, the next step in our process that directly impacts you all is we will be sending out right of entry agreements. So please be on the lookout for those. This is an agreement that you sign that allows us to get onto your property to do the work. It will be followed up with an easement purchase at the end. But again, if you do not sign this now, we are delayed in completing the project. So your assistance in signing and returning promptly is greatly appreciated. So the engineering will complete the design and prepare the bid documents and advertise it for construction. Once those bids are received for construction, council will vote to approve the construction bid amount. The contractor is then given notice to proceed and begins construction. This is the next impact, or I'll say interaction that we need with the residents is the easement. And you will get more information about that as we get closer to this step. I'm just making everyone aware that this will happen. So we will have an easement established around the grinder pump so that we can continue to have access to it to own and maintain it. I understand we've had questions from residents saying, well, if something's wrong with the grinder pump, of course I'm going to call you. The problem becomes is if you sell your house and the next person is maybe not willing to allow us onto their property, that is why the easements are put into place. And then charges will appear on your July 1st tax bill after construction is complete. You will be notified when construction is complete, and then you will have 1 year to connect once construction has been completed. And last slide, Beth. I'm going to leave the contact information up here. My name and email address is up there. The sewer extension line is up there, and Ellen's information is up there as well if you have questions about financing after this meeting.
And this PowerPoint is already on that project page as well. So if you want to go back and look at any of these slides after we're done, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So thank you, Amy, for that presentation. And like we mentioned, like, so we have plenty of time here to hopefully answer everyone's questions. And we're keeping track of this as we've been going along. I think one question that we've seen several times is that can we opt out now that the scope of the project has changed?
So unfortunately, no, you can't opt out at this point. When we did opt in, we had set firm deadlines originally for people to opt in the project because we needed to design the system around who was opting in to account for that amount of flow with the pipe sizes. So we're allowing, if you didn't opt in for some reason previously, we are allowing people to opt in at this point and giving a date for that. That was in one of the slides. Amy can give what that date again is or flip back to that slide. But if you have opted in, you're in.
Okay. So one of the questions is that also, was the mansion considered for the pumping station?
Mansion was looked at. There were multiple, there was a couple questions about the properties looked at in general that we got in writing and that are coming through in the chat box. We did look at multiple properties. Some of them were not applicable because of the geography. The mansion is one of them. It doesn't work for the way that the flow needs to come to the site and the pumps and gravity. So the mansion was never a viable option, but we did look at it. We looked at several other sites. We did try to negotiate with several property owners. We were unable to reach an agreement with the property owners. I just want to be really clear about that. It wasn't because of a lack of trying on the county side, on the staff side that are on this call. There was a lot of outreach done. There was a lot of work done to try to secure properties. At the end of the day, these are private properties and they have a choice in the matter. So they made the choice not to sell to the county. There wasn't a dollar amount that was offered on their side that the county refused to meet. There was just never a dollar amount that they were willing to consider on all the properties that we tried to negotiate with. There was multiple properties. We're not going to provide the information on what those are, and all the details that went on there, but it didn't work out. It's been a long time now. We're trying to move the project forward. This is the way that we can move the project forward, is with these grinder pumps. I know there's a lot of questions on cost. We wanted to get this information out to people sooner rather than later. We don't have every piece of information at this point, but we didn't want to sit on this and not tell you until we had every piece of information. This is why we sent the letter out, letting you know that this has changed, letting you know that we're going to have this meeting to give you the information that we do have at this point. Because the design is not 100% finalized, we don't have the full cost estimate. We know that it will be up. We don't think it will be up drastically. When we're talking about up, we're talking about the neighborhood of a couple $1,000s, not thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars when you're talking about individual properties. But we just don't have to that granular level yet until we have the full cost estimates from the full design. We will give you that once we have it.
Thank you, Lauren. Another question we had was, how does the grinder eliminate any concern of a sewer backflow into our homes?
So grinder pumps versus septic versus sewer system. In any of those situations, you can have a sewer backup into your home if you are not operating things correctly on the homeowner's side of the property. So you all currently have septic systems. You should be familiar with what to put in them, what to not put in them, what will back you up, what will not back you up. A grinder system is going to be a little less challenging than a septic system, because you're not worried about the leach field into your yard, which is right now where you guys have the soil issues in some of the yards, and the water from the system doesn't have anywhere to just leach into. In the grinder system, the water is going to be able to flow. So you're not going to have the issues that you have right now with washing machines or showers, but you still can't flush things that shouldn't be flushed. If a toddler flushes a toy, it's going to clog the system. The grinder's not going to be able to chop that up. So you need to flush things that are flushable. Flushable wipes are not flushable. So you should only be flushing waste and toilet paper. Anything else is going to cause a problem. But currently, if you're flushing anything else, it's going to cause a problem in your septic system. The same would be true of a regular sewer system. It just causes a problem further down the line.
Thank you, Lauren. I think this was mentioned, but we can offer some clarity if there's electrical upgrades that are needed, who would pay for those electrical upgrades and how would that occur?
Amy or
So-
Ellie?
Sure. So that will be, the cost for that will be included in the project. It will be included in the connection charges. And the state funding that the project is receiving is applied directly to those connection charges. So the costs for electrical upgrades should be offset by the state funding.
Can we get an owner's guide prior to the connection? I think we talked that's something that could be available.
Yes, I will admit, I believe what we have right now is probably a little crude, so we will work on putting together something a little more formal and nicely packaged for you all, and I don't see a problem that we can't send that out ahead of time.
Okay. We had talked about a county contractor versus a personal contractor. Can we kind of clarify exactly what that means and why why that is the case?
Ron, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Sorry, please explain how a county contractor is different from our personal contractor that we would reach out to.
The county contractor is an individual who, or I'm sorry, a company that is pre-qualified with Baltimore County to complete the work. They are bidding on the project as a whole. So a plumber is not going to bid on this project. This is a large project. It will be a contractor with experience in grinder pumps and sewage pipeline installation.
So I think some of that question goes into when we say stuff is going to be the contractor versus the private plumber. So the county is going to bid the major portions of this project as a package. All the pipes in the roadway, the repaving of that roadway, the digging of that trench, the purchase of these grinder pumps, the piping between the roadway and the grinder pump, the digging up the yard to put in the grinder pump, the electrical that goes with the grinder pump is all going to be part of this package that the county puts out and bids. That's the price tag that we need to get a final design on and a final number on, so we can give you what that looks like for all the individual properties. When we take out the 4.5 million that the state provided, when we take out the funding that the counties provided, what's left that goes to the property owner as a bill. Then there is a portion that the individual homeowner would have to have a plumber do. And it would be a plumber of their choosing to connect their house into the grinder pump. So that piece of pipe between their house and the grinder pump would be the plumber for the individual homeowner. The rest of it is the county's contractor doing that bigger package.
I'm sorry, you may have said that, but is that with electrical as well? Electrical upgrades?
That's correct. That includes the electrical upgrades would be on the county contractor side, and part of that whole package that's being bid, paid for with the money that came from the state, money that's coming from the county, and then the remainder is what we need to figure out once we have everything finalized and let you know what that remainder is.
Okay. Can we kind of, I know that there's been several questions of why is this cost higher? Is it just the difference between the grinder pumps versus the pumping station expenses?
Amy, can you talk to that?
I can jump in for that. Some of the reason is because of the change in the design, but it's mostly related to increased costs of construction since our last estimate in 2021.
Okay. We have a question. If a leak occurs on a low pressure line compared to a gravity fed line, did the county state that more waste will not be forced from a pressurized system than a gravity fed system?
No, the question was if there is a greater leak concern or environmental concern, and there is no higher environmental concern or leak concern with a low pressure system. The low pressure system is tested before it is put into operation. Those questions aren't the same. Sorry.
I gotcha. Okay. And I think this one was answered already in the chat as well. But yes, the county would own, maintain, repair, and replace grinders as for those that have opted into this program.
Can we please go back to the list of questions and answer the list of questions in an orderly fashion? I'm trying to ask that you do that in a nice way, please.
Bob, I've answered you back in email on that multiple times. There was over 100 questions submitted, and a lot of them were redundant or on topics
Okay,
that
well,
we
I'm
were
not expecting you
addressing.
to answer the redundant ones, but I'm expecting you to answer the ones that are in order.
So there's a lot that were answered by the slides. And then we've also answered in these follow-up questions. So if there's
Okay, well, then
something that
just go
somebody
through
feels
that.
like, if there's a question that somebody feels like hasn't been answered at this point, we are happy to answer it.
Can you answer the first question? And the second question and the third question, because they haven't been answered. Thank you.
I believe those questions were all about the property acquisition, which I did cover a general statement about the property acquisition and the reason that we're moving forward in this direction.
No, the questions were to explain the original project design. If you look at the questions, you'd be able to tell what they are. Thank you.
I think we're going to continue to try to answer everyone's questions and go through, answer everyone's concerns as thoroughly as possible. And again, like I said, if for whatever reason we can't, we need to follow up with folks, we will definitely do that via email and telephone calls as we go through all of these questions. So, Amy, can you kind of clarify again a little bit about the right of entry agreement? We had some questions regarding that as well.
Sure. The right of entry agreement is a legal document that, again, grants the county and their contractor access to your property to be able to install the grinder pump. So I said that we do, excuse me, we do try and put the grinder pumps as close to the roadway as possible for ease of maintenance. That may not always be possible depending on the topography and your lot. So if we do need to come around to the back of your property to install the grinder, or so be it, that right of entry grants us permission to get in and do the work. Following the right of entry, you will be contacted about the county purchasing an easement from you around the grinder pump, again, to maintain, for the ability for us to maintain that grinder pump.
What would happen in the event of a power outage?
So in the event of a power outage, your grinder pump will not operate unless it is hooked up to a generator. So you will need to use it sparingly. There is storage in the tanks, but it is not unlimited storage, of course.
I don't know if it's something we can answer here, but may have to research. If a grinder pump fails and waste contaminates a well or runs into the Gunpowder State Park, who's responsible for the cleanup?
I believe the county is responsible for the cleanup.
I think it would depend on the what happened in that scenario. More details on what would happen, and is it a failure? Is it something that the property owner put into the system that they shouldn't have put into the system? Did somebody flush a bunch, I'll just use kids' toys as an example, a bunch of kids' toys, and it caused the overflow? Or was it a failure to maintain the grinder pump on the county side? Like, what caused the overflow to begin with, I think would be what would come into question in that situation.
Okay. Is there a regularly scheduled maintenance program for the grinder pumps, or is it more of an as needed basis?
My understanding is it's an as needed basis.
Okay, I think we kind of answered this, but maybe offer some clarification. If the grinder pump jams and causes a backup into the home or property, will the county be responsible for the damages?
If that were to happen, you are welcome to file a claim, and our claims division would handle that.
And I think that would get back into what caused it to back up. Did it back up because somebody flushed something they shouldn't have in the individual property? Or did it back up because there was a failure of the pump itself?
Can we explain the
This would,
original?
and just to
sorry.
be clear, this would be the same with a pump station. If there's a pump station and you have regular sewer from the county, it's the same type of situation when claims come in. If there's a sewage backup in your house, there's a process where claims investigates what caused that backup. You typically call a private plumber first. They have to file their report with the county over what they saw. Is it something on the private property owner's side? Is it something on the county side? So it's the same thing with a grinder pump. Right now, where you have a septic system, it's 100% on the property owner because the septic system is privately owned, connected to you and you alone. So whatever's happening between you and your septic system is 100% on the private property owner. When you're moving to the grinder pump or the regular gravity sewer system, it's a very similar situation where you get into the county owns a portion of it, the private property owns a portion of it.
Ron, if you don't mind, I happened to
Eminent,
see.
I'll comment on
Oh.
this because this question has come up multiple times. Eminent domain. The county has not sought eminent domain on these properties. Again, these are private property owners. They had a right of refusal when the county attempted to negotiate with them for private property. They were not interested. The county does not typically do eminent domain. It's very rare that we do that for something. And there's a very high bar that we have to prove to go to court for eminent domain. It's not as simple as just saying we're taking that property. We have to show that we have tried everything and there is no other alternative available besides taking that property. In this case, we would have a very hard time meeting that bar for eminent domain because there is an alternative. This design provides us an alternative where we do not have to take private property. There's also questions I've seen in the chat about gunpowder. Yes, we did yes, we did assess gunpowder property, state property. It would have doubled the price of the project. So this option will increase the price a little bit. We don't have the numbers on that little bit for you, but when I say a little bit, a little bit. The other process, if we would have moved to the state property, would have doubled the cost of the project. So we eliminated that as an option.
Again, we're getting old. Amy, did you have a point you needed to make? I'm sorry.
I saw Bob's comment and I thought or question, and I did think this was worth addressing. Just so you all know, the original design did include a pump station. However, the majority of the properties were still going to be served by a grinder pump. It is just because of the topography of the neighborhood. So only 36 properties right now are changing from a gravity served system to a grinder pump system. Every other property that was included in the project was already going to be served by a grinder pump.
Amy, I'm sorry to jump in here. Can you just elaborate the number in each proposal with grinder pumps?
So there are currently, the last count I had, there are 36 properties that were originally planned to be served with gravity to the pump station, and then the pump station would push everything up to another gravity portion. I had, out of 109 properties, 36 of them were going to be served by gravity. So that's only a little more than 30% were going to be served by gravity. And everyone else was going to be served by grinder pump. And now 100% is going to be served by grinder pump. So we're going from...
So 109 minus 36, right?
Yes, 73.
73, okay. Thank you.
And I'll address in general, I know that there is a lot of feelings on this in a lot of different directions. I get it. This is a lot to take in. As we have more information, we will be communicating with everybody on this. We wanted to get what we had out there now. So you have the information that we have as we have it. At the end of the day, you have to have some way to dispose of sewage on your property. You have to. Unfortunately, these properties were built on mostly small lots, and the soil conditions in some of them have become such that a septic system doesn't work. I can't go back in time to when this neighborhood was built, and neither can anybody on this call, and envision that that is what was going to happen and say they had to be connected to sewer at that time. They weren't. This neighborhood was not. It was built with septics. It wasn't by anybody's fault that's on this call or anybody from the county that's working on this project. That's where we are. So now that we know that there's an issue, we're providing a solution. Our first solution was the pump station. That solution hasn't panned out. So we're providing an alternative solution here to get to the same end result where we can get sewage away from your homes and properly dispose of it. We don't want it sitting in your neighborhood. We don't want it sitting in your neighbor's backyard. That's not in anybody's best interest. This is how we can get it away from your homes. We're doing it in the most economical way that we can do it. We put a pause on this project a couple years ago when we went back and got money from the state for this project. That is incredibly unique. That has not been done in any other community prior to this one. There are several dozen other projects like this throughout the county that did not get that level of assistance. Community has been very fortunate that the state chipped in that $4.5 million to help bring down the cost of this project. This team has worked very hard to provide documentation to get there and to come up with other ways to make this happen. We're trying to find a solution that works. So here's where we're at with the grinder pumps. The other property solutions would have doubled the cost of the project, which I don't think would have been positive for anybody. We already had a significant number of grinder pumps in this neighborhood because of the topography. So adding 30 more isn't that big of a leap here in what we're doing. By us saying the costs are increasing, I can't give you that number, unfortunately, at this point. I would love to give it to you. I'd love to give you that breakdown. It's not that much more. So I just don't want everybody to panic over that. It's not that much more. You also still have the option of the low income program that the county put into place. If you qualify for that, there is the option to finance this over 40 years on your property. It stays with your property. Unlike your septic systems, if you try to sell your home and your septic system doesn't pass, it's on you to fix that septic system. There's not a loan program that goes with the house. This goes with the house. So if this work gets done and you put your house up on the market a year after the work's done, this loan goes with your house for 40 years. It doesn't go with you as a person. Where a septic system, any repairs you need to make go with you as a person. So the county is trying to find ways, not just on this project, but on all projects, to make this work for the residents. And that's one of the ways out there is the way that the loan program works. And I see eminent domain popping up a lot in the chats. Again, that bar is very, very high. And at this point, we don't see us meeting that bar. It would also add several years to the project because you're talking about a long and drawn out court case for us to get there. So we understand there's homes in this neighborhood that are struggling now. We want to provide you a solution sooner rather than later. The 40-year loan option is available to everybody. That's not the low income program. The low income program is separate from that, and it defers your cost if you meet the criteria of the low income program. And Mike or Ellie, can you talk about the low income program?
Sure. It is based on the state tax credit. What is it called, Michael? State.
So it's the state. It's not the homestead. It's the state tax, property tax exemption. So I believe it is if you are if you make under $60,000 a year and are disabled, you can qualify for a credit. And with our program, it's a sliding scale. So depending on where you land on the 0 to 60 determines the percentage of the credit you receive. The other thing I would point out too is while we're on the subject of, I see quite a few comments about, opting out and financing. And just to be clear, and we went over this in 2022 during our presentation, we've posted information online. We provided frequently, FAQs, frequently asked questions. If you were to opt out, if the option were available to opt out, and if you haven't opted in, you still have to pay something. You still have to pay benefits assessments and deficit assessments because the line is running past your house. So it's not as if you were to opt out, you wouldn't pay anything. So that's a decision, and that's something we brought up during in 22 was that, it makes the most sense if you want sewer, if the goal is to provide sewer to the entire it can make more economical sense to just go ahead and connect rather than having to pay benefit and deficit assessments because a line runs past your house and not be able to take advantage of it. So that's something for people to consider.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I meant to address that in my presentation, that the costs for those who are connecting are not much higher than the costs for those who are not. It's basically the cost of the system connection charge, which is $875 or up to $50 a year annually. So if you opt out, you lose the chance of benefiting from state funds. If you opt in, you're not paying much more at all than anyone else.
And also the other point I'd like to make is that if you were to opt in later, then you would be responsible for installing the grinder pump and maintaining the grinder pump on your own. And you also would not have the benefit of the $4.5 million, as Lauren spent about a minute or so on discussing the $4.5 million of state funding to go toward the connection costs. So that's something else to take into consideration.
So there's been a couple questions about other properties connecting in. Are we designing for other properties? No, we're not. We've been very clear about that in the past when that's come up. We are not designing for some future development, some future neighborhood, connections to some other neighborhood. The boundaries of this project are the boundaries of this project. There's a map that was pulled up on one of the slides. If we can go back to that, that's the boundaries of this project. If there are vacant lots within those boundaries, they are also subject to the same conversation where did they want to opt in? Whoever the owner of that lot was may or may not have opted in. When we asked for the opt-in before, they may or may not opt in at this point if they didn't before, but it doesn't extend outside those boundaries.
If I can chime in, I saw a question from, I apologize, I just see the last name Zink, about the right of entry agreement. So you have as much time as you need for the right of entry agreements. If you want to have it looked over, that's obviously you should review before signing. It's just the longer that everyone takes to return those to us, the longer it takes for us to finish the project for advertisement. But yes, a map is included. That is standard practice. You will receive a map of your property showing the approximate location of the grinder. And at that time, we can have discussions if you are unhappy with the location of the grinder. So it'll be a whole packet. It'll include a cover letter with a further explanation, a map of your property with the grinder pump location, and then the actual right of entry agreement itself.
We're also getting a lot of questions about what would happen with the current septic tanks that are on those properties. Will they be removed, or how would that be addressed?
As far as I know, that is up to you and your plumber. I believe they can be abandoned in place, but I am not certain of that. So that is something I can look into and get back to you all on.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Amy. Anything we aren't able to address or aren't sure of, we will.
Will the grinder pumps have sensors? Sorry.
Grinder pumps have alarm systems on them.
With follow-up. But in terms of this septic, we'll care of the can I make to be removed from the system.
I think we had a glitch there in technology. Now I lost my train of thought on what that other question was. Ron, I'll defer to you on what question
Sorry,
you were answering.
I'm going back to look because we've had a couple of overlaps here. So 1 second, because my just glitched too.
There's a question about alarms on the grinder pumps.
Yes.
Yeah, the alarms. They are alarmed at our. We have a 24/7 dispatch facility for our pumping operations, and alarms trigger back to them to go out and handle any issues.
There's also, I know it was hard to see in the picture of the alarm panel system. There is a sticker that is included on your panel that provides the emergency number for our Bureau of Utilities to respond to. So if you ever do have issues with your grinder, you can call that number and they will respond.
Another thing here is that, we've mentioned this, the grinder pumps under this project would be owned, operated, maintained by Baltimore County. If you decide, there's a question about why would a vacant property owner opt in? If you are a vacant property owner and you don't opt in at this point, and 6 years from now you build, your grinder pump's not going to be owned and maintained by Baltimore County. Grinder pumps have a 5 to 10 year lifespan and they cost about $5,000. So if you're not owned and maintained by Baltimore County, every 5 to 10 years, you're paying out of your pocket to replace a grinder pump. I know people that have them and they're not maintained by the county because they weren't part of a health project, and that's the cost that they're looking at. Under this project, it's owned and maintained, operated by the county. If it goes up in 5 years, 10 years, the county comes out and replaces it, and it's not on you as a property owner, which is a benefit to opting into the project as part of the health project.
Just a clarification, vacant properties cannot opt in if there's no structure on the property, if it's not improved, because we aren't going to build a connection to a vacant lot. So correct.
Thank you, Kelly, for clarifying that then. Yep. Sorry,
yep.
I misspoke on that. But it would be of a benefit to have your structure so you could connect now.
True.
There's more questions about the mansion. The mansion property was evaluated for a pump station, but it doesn't meet the geography requirements. So it would cause more issues with pumping than it would solve with where it's located in relation to the rest of the community and how we would get the sewage to that site and then from that site to the rest of the sewage system in the county. So the mansion was not a viable property location for us to pursue.
I think that answers most of the questions that were in the chat. Is there any other additional points from our team that you guys want to make sure that you would like to address that hasn't been addressed yet?
I did see one other one here, the typical dimensions for the easement. Typically they're 10 by 10 square surrounding your grinder pump. Again, if we need additional access, if your grinder pump's in the back of your house, we might need a larger easement, but we do try to keep it as small as possible.
There's questions on the cost of the pumping station. My recollection, and somebody correct me, I feel like the pumping station option was 10 million total project cost.
For just the pump station, yes, I believe that's correct.
And that was made in 2021, that estimate.
I saw a few comments about, regarding the right of entry agreement and, what happens if we don't sign it. I can't say what happens what happens if you don't sign it. Perhaps get more information on that. But again, I would reiterate again that if you don't connect, ultimately you still have to pay something. You still have to pay benefit and deficit assessments. So that will appear on your tax bill, whether you sort of stall if you've opted in and whether or not you sort of stall, like whether or not you sort of try to stall the process. I'm not accusing anyone of doing anything, but just keep that in mind that something still will appear. Benefit deficit assessments will still appear on your tax bill.
I did see a question about roads being, they will be restored to their original condition if any roads need to be dug up or through the course of the projects, correct? Everything's going to be restored to their original state, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the reason, there's a question about this over, okay, so the $10 million was the cost of the version of the project with a pump station, right? Team?
Yep.
$10 million for the pump station plus the piping and connections and the grinders that were part of that. The moving it down to the state property jumped the project up to 20 million, which is why we knocked that one off the table. And this one, very rough estimate, we're talking about 11 million instead of 10 million. But we don't have that final number. So when I say 11 million, I don't have that divided out to what everybody's property is. We take the 4.5 million from the state off of that. There's contribution from the county involved that gets taken off of that before we get to what each property is. So we know that this option is up. The actual pump station itself was about 5 million of the $10 million cost.
I believe that has answered all of the questions in the chat.
I do see one more, Ron. I'm sorry, and I want to make sure I'm understanding this. The project delivery method. So we use a low bidder. Hopefully that answers that question.
So there's a lot of questions about the cost on here. I'm going to reiterate for probably the 50th time on this meeting. We do not have a final cost. We do not have a number. I could tell you 60 million right now, but it's not the number because I don't have a number. So once we have the number, we will tell it to you. We don't have it. So the numbers that I just threw out were from the design that involved the pump station. It was roughly $10 million. The project never got bid because we didn't finalize design. Of that $10 million, roughly half was the pump station itself. They aren't 100% final numbers because the project wasn't bid, it wasn't contracted. There's not a hard number. They were engineers' estimates based on that design. At this point, we've got very rough estimates based on this design that we know it will increase slightly. I don't have an exact number for what that slightly is. As soon as we have it, we will give it to the community. But again, I didn't want to wait another whatever to give you that number and then not have told you things were changing. So we've got a cart before a horse here. I needed to get this information out to the community. That's why we sent the letter out as soon as we could get this information out that we were, moving away from trying to acquire property because it wasn't working. We get regular requests from updates from a lot of members of this community that email us, email our project managers. We try to answer what we can. We wanted to get that information out to everybody, not to one off here, and then not everybody has the same information. So we sent a letter to everyone impacted by the project in the mail. And then we offered this meeting so we can give everyone the same information that we have at the same time. As we have more information, we will have another meeting and give you that information and go through the cost breakout once we have that. I don't have it right now to give it to everybody.
And I think that's the important point is that, again, this meeting is just another step in that process. And we're going to continue to communicate through meetings, through mailings, through phone calls, through every avenue available to us to make sure that everyone is kept up to date and receives the most accurate information possible.
One thing I wanted to mention from some of the things I'm seeing in the chat, as we stated a little while ago, costs, if you opt into the project, your costs are not much higher than if you don't opt in. So it's not a matter of, being concerned about affording it. It's the same, pretty much the same if you opt in or not. It's just a small difference.
And we'll have all that detailed information on what those costs are once we have a better estimate of this design as we get through this design. Then we'll be able to break that out and give you the comparison of what the costs are opted in, what the costs are opted out, what that differential looks like, where the state money is applied, where the county money is applied, and get into that level of detail on this.
While we're on the topic of cost estimates, I saw another question. When will you determine if electrical upgrades are required before design or during construction? So ideally, we would know during design. We will have some contingency, a contingency line item included for any that might be missed. But if you know that your property has a low service if you have 60 amp service, I would, as the engineer, would appreciate a heads up that you know that you have that you'll need an electrical upgrade. That does help us provide a better cost estimate.
I do see we are seeing some questions about, again, just kind of clarifying the opt-in versus opt-out and what, why could there be any changes again because of a scope and project? But again, it sounds, so we can just kind of just summarize that one more time just so people can understand that.
The pipe has to be a certain size depending on how many toilets are connected to it. So if there's 3 houses and 3 toilets connected to it, there's a certain flow. If there's 100 houses and 600 toilets connected to it, there's a bigger flow. So we have to design the pipe to fit what's going to go in the pipe. So we need to know how many toilets are going to connect to the pipe. So when we went out 2 years ago at this point, 3 years ago at this point, and gave deadlines to opt in, it was to figure out the size of that pipe. And we said, if you're in, you're in, because we've counted your toilet in our calculations for sizing this pipe. If you didn't want in at the time, for whatever reason, we're still allowing you to come in because adding a few more toilets doesn't alter us so much. But if everybody jumps out all of a sudden and we only have 1 toilet connected, it's going to mess with the flow, because then there's not enough flow running through the pipe and it's just going to sit there in the pipe and it's going to smell. We don't want that. That's not going to be good for anybody. So we need to know roughly how many toilets are connecting. Adding 1 or 2 doesn't mess with us. Taking in 50% of the houses in or out really messes with the design of the pipe.
One comment on in-person meeting. Once we do get the bid in and have the cost ready, we will be coming out to the community for a meeting, probably next spring, summer.
And there's a lot of comments in here that are not helping move the conversation forward, to be honest. There's a problem in this neighborhood. We're providing a solution to that problem. I can't fix the soils. I can't change the size of the lots. I can't go back to 1950 and redesign what was designed here. This is where we are. There is a problem with sewage. This is a solution to get the sewage away from the house. It's a health violation to just have sewage sit in your yard, in your neighbor's yard. There's a lot of reasons you don't want sewage sitting there. I don't think we need to go into all of them, but we need to get it away from your houses. This is a way to do that. Long term, if some of your neighbors have failed, the likelihood of you failing is high. We've gone into it before, we didn't have it in these slides, but the well proximity to the septics is all pretty close because of the density of this neighborhood and the size of these lots, which again is not something anybody on this call created. None of you created it either. But here we are, and this is a solution to get the sewage away from the wells, to get it away from your houses where it can be treated appropriately. So I think we're gonna wrap up. I know there was a lot of questions submitted in writing. We are compiling them into, by category, and we'll issue a frequently asked questions document that we'll put out on the website to address this. It also cover a lot of the stuff that was asked here tonight, so we make sure you have that in writing. You can go back to it. You have contact information to reach out to the team to ask more questions. If stuff is coming up frequently, we'll make sure that's added to the FAQ, and we'll be back out and in contact with you once we have costs so we can go through that in a breakdown. Councilman Marks, did you want to say anything to close us out?
I just want to thank you for addressing a lot of the questions. And I posed a couple of them that were submitted to me. I also want to thank you for agreeing to have the next community meeting. That was very important to a lot of folks here tonight. So thank you for the communication, and I look forward to this becoming a reality.
I would just one more comment just before we close out, that you do not need to wait. As Lauren mentioned, we provided the contact information. We'll also be sending out frequently asked questions based on we will be responding to the questions that we received via writing. But also that if you have questions, you do not need to wait till the next meeting. You can reach out to us if you have any questions. You do not need to wait till the next meeting or an in-person meeting or virtual meeting to reach out to us. You can ask us questions if you have them. Just wanted to extend that.
Absolutely, and I think it's important. And if you get a hold of somebody within our office and that person doesn't have the answers, we will all reach out to each other to make sure that we put you in contact with the people who can best answer your questions. We're not going to make you wait till another meeting. We're going to have another meeting, but we're going to keep you completely updated throughout this whole process. With that said, again, this slideshow with this contact information is already on our website as well. I want to thank everyone that submitted questions, everyone that answered the questions tonight. And again, we will definitely make sure that we follow up with all additional questions that have been emailed to us, and look forward to continuing this dialogue to help improve the community to the best of our abilities.
Thank you all, and I hope everybody has a good evening.
Good night, everybody.